Today we're going to discuss the part one, which is language as forensic evidence. Now, we have already discussed it previously as well, that when we are talking about anything overall, it has in the sense of language, it is used as evidence, like evidence to what you are thinking, evidence to what you are expressing, evidence to your point of view, evidence of whether the event has happened in the past or is it continuous, in the form of tense. So or from which group do you belong, everything is associated with evidence in in normal conversations as well. When it comes to forensic evidence, so language is a very when language plays a very important role in determining uh, the conclusions regarding the cases. Not only the cases, but it is regarding the things that we the case is the case which is discussed. So if you remember our previous lectures, you remember that we discussed excerpts of two statements where the police officers wrote similar statements. It was a language, it was language which became evidence that it was fabricated, or maybe they both discussed it with one another. This is evidence um, which tells us that the author of these two excerpts that we have discussed were not the same authors. Were the same authors, because uh, one has copied from the other. We didn't know who copied from the other, but it was copied. So language as forensic evidence, it means that it is it it gives us the idea of who is saying something and what is intended in the conversation, whether it is fabricated or whether it is truly written by the same person. It also tells us whether this writing is by from by the person who belongs to a certain background. Even it tells us about the education of the educator of the writer. Now, this is one thing that is important when it comes to the language as evidence, and that is that language. When we study language, we see that the evidence can be in the form of oral. Language can be in the form of oral, and language can be in the form of written text as well. So the problem comes when the forensic linguist has to analyze uh, the oral text or the written text. So when it comes to the oral text, so it's fine that the author is going to that the forensic linguist is going to look at the text which is said orally. So if for example there is a case that you have phone recording of and you are listening to that recording. So in listening to that recording, you listen that someone is saying something. However, you may not know that whether maybe he or she, while recording this, is because it's a voice recording, so, and it's not video recording, so maybe he or she is threatened and there is a pistol on pointed at the person, or maybe uh, in such a scenario, the person is asked to record the maybe it's a demand of ransom, or maybe it's a threat note, or means a threat audio. You're giving threat to someone. So in that case, you see that there is um, this voice which is of the same person, but then you'd see that there are certain oral factors to that conversation, where you'll feel that the person is hesitant in saying things, the person is maybe breathing very heavy because obviously it's anxiety, it's like you're under pressure at the time when you're saying something. So there are a lot of factors which come which are counted when it comes to the language as the forensic evidence. So in this chapter, or in this part, we are going to discuss the road of authorship, in which we'll understand what is an author, and and we look at it, the history of authorship. That is how the whole concept began, because previously there were poets, and poets used to write in there was no writing, it was all oral. So even poetry was all oral. Stories were narrated, stories were not written, stories were narrated, and they were learned from one person, and they were learned, and then they were passed from one person to another, or from one generation to another generation. So there was this change which was there. So because when I am saying something and the other person is repeating the same thing after me, it is not necessary that it's going to be the same. The story is going to be different, the words are going to be different, the perspective is going to be different. So we are going to study that from the perspective of forensic linguistics. Moreover, we are going to study the author constructed. That is how this concept of authorship is determined or owned, and what are the problems which are associated with the authorship. We are also going to discuss the author style, which is a very important part of forensic linguistics, because a style is the part of every individual. And you might have studied it in stylistics as well, that in every individual has certain way of typing things or certain way of saying things. Even if you listen to my recordings, you'll feel that I have a particular way of using words, and there are certain words that I use a lot, like for example certain, and I use for instance a lot, I use certain. uh, these are the terminologies that you feel that this is this makes this conversation uh, in my style, and that's my style of saying things. So every author has a different style of saying things, and that's how a forensic linguist gets to know whether the text, the question text, is written by or said by uh, the same person, or is it fabricated, or is it forcefully said by the other person. Just the way, for example, if someone is being questioned regarding in the court regarding he's the witness, and he's being questioned regarding what he has seen on that day. So if it is fabricated, so the person will not remember all the information. So if the lawyer is asking different question and there are counter questions, so there is a possibility that the person might commit a mistake, which would let the forensic linguist know that this person is not telling the truth, and the person is lying, because they can sense it easily, not sense but prove it easily. Then, in the third chapter, in the third section of language as an evidence, we are going to study, and in detail, going to study time, variation, and genre, and how it helps in understanding of time, of the text, and how different authors write, and if there is similarities in authors, then how is it discussed, and if there are similar differences in the author's writing, then how is it discussed. We're also going to study the copyright issues, which is important part of forensic linguistics as well. Okay, so as linguistic studies are forensic linguistics are all associated with language. So when it comes to language as evidence, we see that there are three major areas in which we study it as language, where you don't have any context with that. For example, if you find a suicide note in front of you, and there is nothing else related to that, where you do not get to see the first hand knowledge of the of what happened, or when the person was saying it, or whether it when it was recorded. There is nothing like that. Whereas in language in courts, you can see that there are recordings. You can, not in Pakistan though. In Pakistan, the recordings are not available, but there is a person who is typing the important points which are discussed in the court. However, those that that language is not the true representation of what exactly the person is saying. Maybe the person is saying it in Pashto, and the typing is done in their own language, maybe in English or maybe in Urdu, and it's not exactly what uh, uh, they are saying. So in Pakistan, things are very different from what it is in foreign countries and in different other countries as well. So uh, we have to look at, because see, in Pakistan, when police is arresting someone, there is no such thing as Mirinda warning or Mirinda laws, because if Mirinda laws are when you ask a person to remain silent, and you have the right to remain silent, and anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court and something like that. So, and then they ask for the lawyer, that you have the right to go for the lawyer if you cannot afford it. So the um, uh, you um, like you'll be given one lawyer by the government. It's something like that. So here in Pakistan, it's nothing like that. And things are very different in Pakistan, whereas in foreign countries it's a bit different. Then we have language in courts, which is mostly associated with the oral version of it. Language as evidence is associated with all of these. And then language in legal products. Language in legal products can be, for example, the text of maybe the verdict which is given, or for example um, the language which is in some contract, or maybe language which is in divorce papers, language which is there in some agreement between two parties. These are all the part of language in legal products, right? So it is mostly written. And we have language in courts, which is normally oral. And overall, language as evidence can be oral as well as written. So we cannot restrict language as evidence. Language as evidence can be oral, language as evidence can be written as well. The way we reach these or approach these perspectives or these areas in forensic linguistics, we look at it from the perspective of authorship, which we are going to discuss in detail after this lecture. In the coming lecture, we are going to discuss it. It's our next topic. And then it's like, through it can be analyzed through discourse analysis, like whether you are analyzing it and finding the perspective of what the person has said or what was intended. So it is done through discourse analysis. Or you can go for language structure analysis, where you can see how the structure of language is there in legal discourses, and what kind of language is used in forensic in legal cases. And it can be linguistics proficiency. Linguistic proficiency can be, for example, if someone has written a text and you want to see whether they are linguistically proficient in a specific field in a specific language or not, so you actually go for that. It can be language honesty, which you want to analyze, which like for example, I've just given you the example of a case where there is a person who's interrogated, or maybe there's a person in the court, and when the person is witness, and when the person is narrating the story, so you see that, you want to, through the language, you get to know that whether the language is whether what the person, whatever the person is saying, that is honestly the same thing that they have witnessed, or is there some fabrication involved in that. Now, then the language style of forensic style we are also going to discuss in detail. So you also look at the forensic style, language style, and also you look at the forensic phonetics, which is a very famous and important in forensic linguistics. Now, forensic phonetics, we um, discuss or we look at the phonemes, or we want to or we can identify the person through the through the way they have pronounced certain words, or they have missed out certain phonemes, maybe they have um, and it is also associated with dialectology. That is, through forensic phonetics you get to know, just like for example in Pashto, people of different dialects, when they speak in Pashto, like people from normally from Charsada, they confuse the sound of p with f. So we get to know this through the forensic analysis. And this is something that is associated the with language as evidence. I hope it is clear. In the next chapter, we are going to discuss, or in the next section, we are going to discuss about the authorship.